in the forehead. Neither of them had soot accumulation in their trachea or bronchial tubes or carbon monoxide in their blood, indicating that they died before the fire started.
Later, when I saw the autopsy report and seen that he died of a gunshot wound to the head, it made me wonder if it was in fact the snipers that were in the barn garage that was in the back of the property.
The autopsy reports also indicated extensive body mutilation to Philip Henry and Jimmy Riddle. The entire right side of Riddle's body from the shoulder to the hip had been torn away. In previous testimony, Dr. Nizam Pirwani, the medical examiner, observed that this could have been the result of the collapse of the building or an encounter with a tank tread. Philip Henry's body was interred during the year following his death. However, a new autopsy was requested by Jimmy Riddle's relatives to settle the circumstances surrounding the missing portion of Riddle's body and the gunshot wound to his head. Dr. Ron Grazier, the forensic pathologist who conducted the examination, concluded in his findings that the damage to Riddle's skeletal remains is consistent with a tank having torn the body apart. A forensic examination of the bullet entry wound in Jimmy Riddle's skull could not be conducted because the evidentiary portion of the skull was missing. Dr. Pirwani performed the original autopsy and was asked to provide a certified copy of his report for comparison. According to Riddle's relatives, the local Texas authorities and U.S. Marshals refused to allow Dr. Pirwani to turn over the documents.
We got to Dr. Pirwani's office trying to get the information on my brother, Jimmy Riddle. Dr. Pirwani told me that he didn't know why they kept trying to keep the information from us. He didn't know what they were hiding, and that he had the information, but he was ordered by the U.S. Marshals and the JPs not to release any information to me.
While Americans were watching events unfold at the front of the building, the FBI's infrared video shows what took place at the rear of the structure.
What a FLIR really does is it takes invisible radiation, which is called infrared radiation, and it converts it into visual radiation, you might say, that we can see with the eye. What we have here is a tank infantry type of an operation. As the tank moves forward, two men have dropped out of the escape hatch. They roll over, and as they roll over, they open up with automatic gunfire. We've measured the actual time of the individual flashes, and they occur at a fraction of a second, in some cases a 30th of a second. There is absolutely nothing in nature that can cause thermal flashes to occur in a 30th of a second.
Somebody related or who had prepared a film or analyzed a film, representatives of the department and representatives of the FBI went over it in detail and concluded that there was no basis for suggesting that shots had been fired.
As the tank crushes the roof of the gymnasium, gunfire can be seen streaming into the dining room from positions in the courtyard.
I stopped counting after about 62 individual shots.
Interviewed on NBC's Meet the Press on May 4, 1997, FBI Director Louis Freeh stated that no shots were fired by any federal agents outside of the compound, and that allegations raised about gunfire seemed to be based on some inferences from infrared flash patterns and heat patterns. I think the overwhelming evidence clearly shows that no shots were fired.
It's indicative of sunlight reflecting off something and registering on the flare. It could be a thermal pattern. If it were a thermal pattern, there is nothing that persists from that.
Right.
So therefore, it is more likely to have been reflected light off of something shiny, in which the sunlight now gives an apparent temperature rise.
From the basic physics, it's safe to say that it's impossible for the Waco FLIR to detect any solar reflections of any kind.
On our wish list as investigators was taking a harder look at the FLIR. The congressional staff was never able to find or take advantage of a genuine FLIR expert to watch the FLIR video with us and to understand exactly what we were seeing.
By comparison, this Department of Defense FLIR video, taken in Somalia in October of 1993 as troops exit a helicopter, shows gunfire similar to the thermal signature on the FLIR videotape at Waco. A former analyst from the U.S. intelligence community, Maurice Cox, tested the FBI's claim, applying the principles of solar geometry. For an aircraft flying at an altitude of 9,000 feet, a flash anomaly occurring on the ground would be visible in an area only 100 feet wide. Frame-by-frame measurements of the FLIR videotape showed a repetition of 10 flashes per second, the same rate as a machine gun firing at 600 rounds per minute. According to the Sunlight Reflections Report, in order to duplicate these multiple flashes, the reflective surfaces would have to be exactly the same shape and size and positioned in an array too precise to occur by chance. To record sunlight reflections at 10 flashes per second, the FBI's small aircraft would have had to travel at Mach 1.8, nearly twice the speed of sound. The Sun Reflection Report concluded that the flash signatures on the Waco FLIR video could only have been caused by gunfire. In January 1999, Mr. Cox challenged Director Free and Bureau scientists to disprove his findings. They did not respond.
If someone comes to me to understand the data, I need to tell them the uncertainty associated with it. If the government is only telling them this was not a field of fire, well, the government is refusing to look at this, and anybody with their plain eyes could see, well, something's going on there.
You know, when you think of the fact they're shooting automatic weapons fire into a building with children in it, there's something wrong.
Dr. Allard has stated that this video shows gunfire being directed into Mount Carmel from the outside of Mount Carmel on April 19th. The only people that could have come from would have been federal agents.
Other flashes can be detected on the FLIR tape within an hour of the fire, such as this detonation in the courtyard, which has a thermal signature that is consistent with a hand grenade exploding. And more gunfire can be seen near this tank. But if the FBI's claim is true, and the hostage rescue team didn't fire at Branch Davidians, then there is another possibility.
According to what we saw written in the Book of Nahum, we were to undergo a military-style attack. We were to be attacked by tanks and people from the military.
On the use of military personnel and heavy equipment against U.S. citizens, other questions linger. How much was used and why?
There was concern expressed that the FBI had only one hostage rescue team and they were tiring. Do you recall that conversation in that meeting?
I recall, I believe I asked for that meeting, yes.
On April 14th, just 5 days before the fire, a meeting was held between Attorney General Janet Reno, the FBI command team, and Special Forces commanders Brigadier General Peter J. Schumacher and Colonel Gerald Boykin of Delta Force. The purpose of this meeting was to convince Reno to authorize a final assault at Waco.
Military is trained to find, fix, and destroy the enemy. You don't worry about warning your military enemy of constitutional rights.
What is generally known or known in public as Delta Force is in reality called Combat Applications Group. So anybody who asks about Delta will get told with a straight face by the Army that no such organization exists. What organization does exist is Combat Applications Group, and their stated mission is to perform counterterrorism operations overseas in defense of U.S. interests.